Today we're using, instead of breadcrumbs, a gluten-free grain that a lot of people don't realize is gluten-free, and that's millet. Has anybody tried millet on its own before or cooked with it?
Right.
Yeah, a few people.
I'll pass it around so that you guys can see what it looks like. You know, this is in its raw form. There you go.
It's an ancient grain, and it's quite high in fiber and rich in many of the B vitamins. So B vitamins are, each one has a different role, but together they help to convert the food that we eat into energy that our body can use. So very important for metabolism.
So Brussels sprouts, like Christy mentioned, did you know that Brussels sprouts, I think it was recently, it was last year I heard that it was voted as the most hated vegetable by kids worldwide, which is, you know, it's interesting. It is such a delicious vegetable, but it is part of the cabbage family, so you do have that sulfur compound. And I think that's the main reason. It's when it's cooked, especially for long periods of time, it will stink up the entire house. So what I suggest with Brussels sprouts is, you know, either cook them outside, cook them fast, or, you know, this one's in the oven. It's a little bit longer, but because I'm adding some other things, I'm adding some balsamic vinegar, some other flavorings, you don't get that, you know, big stench of sulfur cabbage.
And like most things, you're not going to boil them. You know, I think kids may not like them because they're having this boiled Brussels sprouts, but Jeremy's going to roast them in the oven. It really helps to caramelize and some of the flavors come out and break down those not so pleasant compounds.
Actually, I put that in too early. So what I did was you just wash the Brussels sprouts really well, cut the very bottom of the stem off. If the outside leaves are like really bad, then take them off, you know, discard them. But most of the time, if you get good Brussels sprouts, you don't have to do that. I think it's a waste of time, especially if you have to peel like 100 Brussels sprouts. No one's doing that. So just wash them very, very well and trim the bottom. And then I cut them half just so that they cook a little bit quicker. And we're going to dress them. Very simple. I want an acid, so you can use white wine vinegar. You can even use white wine. I like balsamic vinegar, and I like how when it heats up, it gets this, you know, really nice sweet flavor. So a little bit of balsamic vinegar. Very simple. A little bit of olive oil. And just a touch of salt. And black pepper. I've worked with Brussels sprouts quite a bit and done many things with them. And for me, personally, this is my favorite combination. You know, very simple. So you just stir them around. It's going to go into your baking dish. And I'm going to add one last thing, which is an entire head of garlic. Now, depending on how much you like garlic, I mean, you can add a little less. But we're going to keep it whole, and we're going to roast it, and it's going to give it a really, really nice flavor. So what I'm doing is I'm just cutting it in half. Some of the Ontario garlic or the stem garlic has a really thick stem in the middle. It's not as easy to cut in half, but just make sure you have a sharp knife. And I want to cut it horizontally so that I'm exposing pretty much half of the garlic. And we're going to stick that whole thing right in there. If you get some, you know, pieces that fall apart, no problem. You can peel them. You can take the skin off. I kind of like that protective layer because it gives you like this really nice pocket of gooey roasted garlic, which if you're lucky to find, you hide it from everybody else. And that's it. That's going in the oven. And we're going to roast it for about 20 minutes, so halfway through. And then we're going to add the au gratin topping. So millet, we've cooked it. Very, very simple to cook. This is 2 to 1. So 1 part millet to 2 parts liquid. And it takes about 15 minutes. So bring the water or stock to a boil. You add your millet, lid on top, reduce the heat to low. In about 15 minutes, it cooks almost like quinoa, or not quinoa, couscous. So it absorbs all that liquid, it absorbs all that water. So once you see it's dry in there, you fluff it up, you taste it, it should be pretty much finished. So we've cooked it, and we're going to add some other flavoring. So I've got some lemon zest, which is fantastic in here. Now, au gratin, sometimes people think that it's just like cheese topping, but it's not. It's a crispy topping. So traditionally, you would have a little bit of cheese and a hard cheese.
And lots of butter.
Lots of butter, typically, but breadcrumbs. Breadcrumbs is some sort of vehicle to carry flavor of the fat from the butter and to give you that texture, really nice crispy texture on top.
So again, we use a little bit of cheese for flavor in the Elixir kitchen. Cheese tends to be higher in saturated fat, so you don't want to have too much cheese in your diet, but we like to use the really sharp flavored cheese because then a little bit goes a long way in terms of flavor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if anyone's tried the reduced fat cheeses, but my personal opinion is it's not even worth it. So go for the good stuff that has a beautiful flavor to it, and then you don't need as much.
And we'll just add a little bit of fresh thyme, a little bit of black pepper, and if the cheese is a salty cheese, like if you're using a Parmigiano or if you're using a Pecorino cheese, then it's got a saltiness already to it. So I probably wouldn't add any more salt. Taste it at the end. If you need it, then you add it at the end. So that's it. Very, very simple. And you have, your own little homemade gratin, and you're going to pour that right over top. You don't need too much. You don't want to pack it because you still want to see the Brussels sprouts. And this is after I've cooked it halfway through. If I do it from the beginning, it's going to get too dark. It's actually going to probably burn on you. That's why I do it halfway through. That's it. That's going to go into the oven. Finish the rest of the 20 minutes. And it'll look, I got a little crispy, but it's okay. But it'll look pretty much like this. So that millet is crisped up and it's giving you this beautiful crunchy texture on the top of the Brussels sprouts. Mine are a little dark. I left them in a little too long. But the beautiful thing about Brussels sprouts too is they're layered, so you can just take those layers off right before serving, and that's it.
I like recipes that have a built-in.
Exactly, a fail-safe.
Fail-safe.
Is always good. That's it. Really nice way to try your Brussels sprouts this year.